everyone, welcome to Tales and Texts, and I'm your host Nisha. Let's talk tarot. And one of the cards that I want to talk to you about today, and a trend that I want to talk to you about today, is the trend of the Empress as a pregnant woman. Now, I'm sure you will have watched other channels where a similar topic of discussion, a thread of discussion would have been done, and you might be very familiar with the sort of split that's come within the tarot community, where there are a couple of readers who really resonate with the imagery of the Empress as a mother and a being who is able to create life, while at the same time you see other people who are talking about how we're sort of pigeonholing the archetype of the Empress by considering this energy, this individual, as someone as only representative of motherhood and femininity. So I just wanted to talk about my thoughts and my perspectives about this issue, and just share a couple of perspectives that I'm coming from. Now, these opinions are all my own, and I would love to hear your opinions as well. When we're talking about tarot, no video can be done without a tarot card, and therefore I've chosen the Empress card from the Everyday Enchantment Tarot. Now, this is literally the only deck that I have which has human imagery in it. I have done a video in the past where I talk about why I don't typically use decks which have people in them. I will link that video down below in the description box if you're interested to know why. But if you can look at this imagery, you will see that there's this woman, and there are children in the house. There's a toddler and a baby, possibly a newborn or just a little older. And the feeling that you get with this is that of family, of bonding, of this house filled with love, light, and laughter, this togetherness, this familial bond, and just everything seems happy and upbeat and positive and just very motherly and very feminine. Now, this is the imagery that you would often see on the Empress card of any tarot deck. It's either in the traditional RWS, you see an actual pregnant woman sitting in a field of flowers with this water flowing near her, but you also see imagery of the Empress as someone who's already had her baby, or her children are in the early childhood period, and just the sense of motherhood and pregnancy that just pervades the air. Other keywords that come up when you talk about the Empress are domestic bliss, as evidenced by this tarot card right here, and we talk about the abundance and prosperity that very specifically a feminine and womanly energy brings into the house. In many cultures around the world, including Hinduism, which is the culture that I come from, the archetype of the Empress is always considered to be someone who is sort of representative of the earth. It could be the planet, or it could be the kingdom of which she is the Empress of. And specifically speaking from a Hindu perspective, there are many scriptures which talk of how keeping the queen or the Empress happy would mean that the subjects would be happy, because it is as good as tending to Mother Earth, or tending to the goddess who has come down in a human form to take on the role of the queen or the Empress of a particular place. Now, this imagery is something that is pretty similar if you consider in ancient civilizations, but as we progress further, we look at how there is a very dramatic shift in the role that an Empress or a queen would play in the socio-political environment of their kingdom. Now, when I say queen, I am not talking about especially in terms of tarot, there is a lot of blurring of boundaries, because there is also the queens in the court cards. When I am saying queen here, I mean an Empress, or rather an equivalent of Empress, considering from a socio-political perspective, and not specifically the court. So that distinction is something that I do want you to keep in mind. Now, in terms of how I feel about the archetype of the Empress being representative of motherhood and pregnancy. Well, honestly, I just feel I agree with the party which feels that we are pigeonholing the archetype of the Empress when we consider her as only the symbol of motherhood and abundance. Because if you actually think about history, and for a very large history, excluding some ancient times, excluding certain civilizations, for a very large part, predominantly, empresses were not given the opportunities to be mothers. And when I say mothers, I'm not just meaning the biological function of having a child, of procreating, but I'm talking about discharging motherly duties. And this is predominantly because a lot of royal families across cultures, and I'm not just talking about the British or the Greeks, even Indian rulers, every culture around the world had a tendency where the aristocratic families, which included the emperor and the empress, they would hire wet nurses and nannies to take care of their young. In that way, the empress was involved insofar as becoming pregnant in order to produce the next natural heir, which would most often be the son. And beyond that act of procreation and labor and childbirth, there would be a sort of detachment between the baby and the empress, because the wet nurse would breastfeed the baby, the nannies would take care of the the development and the growth of the newborn into adolescence. And then once the child would reach adolescence, depending on whether the child was a boy or a girl, they would be sent away to the respective tutors, either to learn the art of statecraft or to learn the art of being a wife. So the involvement of the empress as a mother was extremely limited. Now, what was the empress involved in? Although the world has been highly patriarchal, and although a large part of royalty is ruled by male monarchs, the women in their lives have played a predominant and a very significant role in the socio-economic political development of the states that they were ruling. If you look at medieval England, we see that there are many queens, who have had a very, powerful place in the sense that they have had the ears of their husbands, who were the kings or the emperors of the state, and they could recommend solutions, they could recommend political alliances, they could through their role in the court as the consorts of the king or the emperor, they could, in a very subtle way, change the political dynamics both within the court and outside the court. Now, if we look at India in particular, since I am from India, I would want to focus more on talking about what I'm familiar with. We can see the evidence of so many empresses and queens who have played such an important role in the development of India as it is today. Consider Gulbadan Begum, who was Babur's daughter. Babur was the first Mughal emperor to come in from the Mongol region and invade India. She was the sister of Humayun. She had a very important role in the court because Humayun would constantly seek advice from his sister when he was taking political decisions. Even Akbar, who was Humayun's son and Gulbadan Begum's nephew, would depend very heavily on his aunt to take decisions for the development and growth of the nation. Then we have Nur Jahan, who was, which is the titular name given to Meher-un-Nisa, and she was the consort of Jahangir, who was Akbar's son. Now, there is a book called Empress by Ruby Lal, which I highly recommend. It chronicles the life of Nur Jahan from her birth to her, coronation, to her. It sort of rags to riches story where she becomes from someone who's a nobody to the most powerful woman in Hindustan by becoming not only the consort of Emperor Jahangir, but by becoming the Empress herself. And when I say Empress, I'm not just talking about the title. There were large stretches of history where Jahangir was just a figurehead and most of the decisions were taken by Nur Jahan. So do read Ruby Lal's Empress. I will link that down below, the Amazon link, and if you can find it even in another local bookstore, I would highly recommend that you support your local bookstores by purchasing the book there. Now, apart from the Mughals, we have Hindu queens like Rani Lakshmi Bai, who was instrumental in keeping the invaders, the British invaders, away from Jhansi. Even when her forces were decimated, she held them back single-handedly until she was killed. We have Ahilya Bai Holkar, who set up the Holkar dynasty in the Maratha region, and then we have Kittur Rani Chennamma, who was extremely important in the freedom fight in South India, specifically in the Karnataka region. So these are just a very few examples of how queens and empresses within India have been instrumental in the socio-political development, in the independence movements of the country. And we can see how, there is I wouldn't say an absence of motherhood, but the focus of these empresses was beyond the nursery, beyond being just a caregiver. They were instrumental in protecting the states that they were responsible for. They were instrumental in shaping the states that they ruled, and they were instrumental in bringing in a certain level of empowerment for women, which might not look like empowerment in today's standard, mind you, but they still showed the world that women can be something, can be someone, can do something. And that allowed women of their era certain liberties, which was revolutionary in a sense. So when I see the Empress card in the tarot talking only of motherhood, only of femininity, I feel we're sort of shortchanging this archetype, because this archetype deserves a lot more. Because we all say that female empowerment is like becoming the empress of our own lives. And in that sense, we need to make space for women who choose also to not become mothers, or for female identifying individuals who cannot be mothers. As our society evolves, as our definition of what gender and what gender roles evolves and changes, we need to strip away the traditional meaning of what the Empress card actually is. Because let's face it, if you consider the theory of tarot having evolved from the game of tarot, it was inspired by a very specific culture and a very specific system of politics, and the roles very particular to that system and to that country, to that region, to that time. Having the Empress card, which is a major arcana card, which is something which is considered to be predominantly more important compared to any other tarot card, including the court cards. And that's why we see the distinction between Empress and Queen, because the Empress is higher and the Queen of the Courts is at a lower standing. Showing the Empress card as a pregnant woman can become problematic in terms of when you talk about pro-life versus pro-choice. Especially in a culture now when we've seen so many countries around the world are denying the abortion right to women, are denying women the opportunity to have agency over their bodies. Having an archetype which is so heavily, I know that this word is a little might be offensive to somebody, it's fixated. I feel like the Empress archetype in the tarot community is fixated on pregnancy and motherhood, to the point that it becomes toxic. Because when we're looking, like I just discussed right now, the entire multifaceted nature of who and what an empress can really and truly be goes beyond the motherhood aspect. And now that we've seen Roe versus Wade being overturned, and how so many other countries are going to follow the example of the US in stripping more rights from their women and tightening controls over women's agency and what women can do or wear and so on, having such an important archetype, especially given that so many people are actually accessing tarot more these days than ever before. Not just in terms of people seeking tarot readings, that has increased exponentially, but we're also seeing the number of people who are reading tarot for themselves. And so when they purchase decks and they see this imagery, this major arcana, which they've been told is such an important card, it's such an important message, and when you read the online descriptions, it talks of pregnancy, it talks of domestic situation, it talks of marriage, and these things may not hold true for everyone across the board, and therefore that's why we need to sort of my suggestion would be to ungender the major arcana. So don't hold the Empress significantly to a feminine or womanly energy. Similarly, don't hold the Emperor to a masculine or male-centric energy. Instead, I would say that consider the energy of the Empress to be something surrounding creativity towards the free-flowing nature of the earth. For example, the Empress could be the rivers, the oceans, the air, something that isn't fixed, something that is flowing, something that can take any shape and any form, because it's so flexible, and there's this just sense of passion and creativity. Whereas let the Emperor be something more strategic, something more clinical, something more fixed and grounded, like the earth, the trees. I would prefer to see something like that, the ungendering of the tarot. And I think that would solve a lot of problems in terms of making tarot more accessible, but also allowing people to fully access the true multifaceted and diverse nature of the Empress card. Because I know that we can do better, and I know that the Empress can offer all of us so much more than what we can receive today, what we are able to receive today. Another option that I do have is do what a lot of people are doing for the Lovers card. So in a lot of decks you'll see that the Lovers card are 2 in number, whereas one is cis-het in nature and the other is it's ungendered or non-gendered, non-binary in nature. I would say that keep 2 Empress cards and 2 Emperor cards. I'm just adding the Emperor, I'm tagging it along because there are a lot of problematic areas in the Emperor as well, but I think it's more glaring in the Empress right now. So I would say that deck creators, tarot artists offer the option of 2 Empress cards, wherein people can choose which Empress they want to work with. Do they want to work with the mothering, nurturing, pregnant, the highly feminine energy aspect of the Empress? Then they can go ahead and choose that. But if they want, they also have the choice to work with an Empress who is ambitious, has amazing political acumen, who is very aware of the world, who is a badass, and who can just go out there and get things done. And she is a boss. I mean, when I say she, I mean ungendering. I'm sorry for using a particular pronoun. I mean an ungendered person, a non-binary person, someone who is an individual who embodies the creative aspects and even nurturing aspects. That's fine, as long as it's not sort of pigeonholed and fixated on pregnancy and motherhood. So you get the drift. So that's my suggestion. Now, what suggestions would you recommend? What do you feel about the whole Empress debate? I would love to know your insights. Do comment below and let me know what you think. And if you are a deck creator, what are you planning to do? How are you going to represent the Empress in this new environment where the lines of who we are, the definitions of who we are as individuals are constantly shifting, the political environment is shifting, and even a simple image on a tarot card can have such an important impact on how we view ourselves and our place in the universe. So yeah, let me know down below. Alright, if you stuck around with me so far, thank you so much, I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next episodes of Tales in Text. Bye, have a wonderful day.